Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of The Monster's Den. It's Thursday night. We have arrived. We are going to talk Giallo tonight. Before we get started, let me introduce the crew. We got all the way from Scotland, Mr. Davy Gallagher. He's got his nice little setup behind him. I like that. We got from the grand state of Pennsylvania, Elvis himself, Mr. Craig Kaminski, and my neighbor from across the river, the king himself, Chris Allo. Well, notice how I point that way? I'm pretty sure that's the right way. Chris,
It could be.
you've been in this office before. I think it's that way, right? Maybe it's that way. I don't know. Whatever.
You're all over that way for
He's
me.
definitely not over that way. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
He's not that way. So anyway, it's all about Giallo tonight. So for those of you who might be watching and you're saying to yourself, what the fuck is a Giallo? Well, a Giallo is an Italian film in most cases, although the Spaniards kind of did it a little bit later on. A Giallo film is basically like a murder mystery, sexploitation, proto slasher type of thing. And generally speaking, you have a lady or ladies in peril, lots of ladies getting killed, sometimes men getting killed. You have a killer who you don't know who the identity is, who has like a black mask, maybe a hat, black gloves, and a knife. And there's loads of random plot points and random sex and nudity. And by the end of the film, there's usually a reveal and maybe a twist, and you're left saying, huh? And then they explain everything about why the person who is the killer is the person. And then you're like, oh, okay. But they're loads of fun. Now, let me preface this by saying some of you are probably thinking, oh, yeah, great. We're going to hear about Deep Red, and we're going to hear about, Cat of Nine Tails. And we're going to hear, nope. We are specifically not going to talk about the big films from guys like Dario Argento and Lucio Fulci and Mario Bava, the big three of the Giallo genre. We have talked about a lot of their films already. We have ranked the films of those directors. So those big Giallo films, we've kind of already covered here. There's so many other great ones. So we have decided not to talk about those and talk about some of the lesser known but really cool ones. And I will say this was pretty difficult because there's a lot of really good fun ones, and I had a hard time deciding on which five I was going to pick because I had like a whole big list. I'm like, oh, these are all really cool. But we'll each talk about five. Hopefully there's not a lot of overlap today, but you never know. So with all that being said, Chris is going to kick us off with, why don't we do two at a time, and then we'll go two, and then one. So we'll go a couple.
Okay, cool. Perfect. First thing, Pete, you did an excellent job, I think, on explaining what a Giallo is. Besides us speaking about it, for anybody out there, I would 100% recommend this triple disc set that came out, like 3-4 years ago, I think, maybe 4-5 years. All the colors of Giallo. It's a 3-disc set put out by Severin Films. Has an excellent documentary on the history of Giallo films. It's got 4 hours of trailers, which also has running commentary in all the trailers where they tell you this movie's really shitty, but the trailer's good. And then there's a third trailer, a third disc on soundtrack. Soundtracks, because all the Giallos or Gialli, as I should properly say it, always seem to have great scores. And there's also, I've never watched the third disc on here actually, which is the Krimi films, the German films from the early '60s, the German crime films that were an influence on Italian Giallo. I never got to watching that yet, but one of these days.
I will say, if you've never seen any Giallo films or Gialli before, that is a great introduction. If you've seen lots of Giallo films before, that is a great supplement, because Chris convinced me to buy that, I don't know, like a year or so ago, and I'd seen lots of these films, and then I sat down and over the span of a couple of days, I watched that, because I mean, the 4 hours of trailers are a blast.
Amazing.
And I literally sat down with like a pen and paper as I'm watching. It's like, oh, I've never seen that one before, and I'm writing down the title, going to see if it's available to stream or to buy and all this kind of stuff. Awesome fun. And then you get the whole documentary of what the genre is all about. So I would 100% absolutely agree with checking that out. First or last, whatever. Mandatory.
I'd go in the middle, because it ruins some endings for some pretty
that's a
major
good
ones.
point, Davey. Yeah, that is a good point. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
It can expect you to know a little bit.
I think Davey is right. In the documentary, they sort of mention, if you don't want to know anything, maybe don't watch these. But But the trailers are good. I mean, it's all good. But yeah, you're right. If you don't want to be spoiled, but if you just want to find out which Giallo films look like they have the most action and the most nudity, yeah, it's definitely worth checking out.
And a lot of these films have pretty cool, interesting twist endings. So we're going to try very hard not to give too much away on some of these films we're talking about. Yeah. We're not going to, hey, let's be real. Most of the plot points on a lot of these films are kind of the same. Just who the killer is and why is usually what's different. So we won't get into too much storyline here today, and we'll try to stay away from, the big endings on some of these as best we can, because, again, some of the endings are worth the price of admission. Just the last like 10 minutes. You get to find out who the killer is. You scratch your head, then they give you the explanation. You're like, oh, okay, that was pretty cool. So anyway, back to Chris. I'm sorry.
No worries. All right, number 5. Number 5, this is from director Andrea Bianchi, who directed one of the best, worst zombie movies ever in Burial Ground. This is from 1975, Strip Nude for Your Killer. So fucking sleazy. Movie opens with a beautiful naked girl, spread eagle, on a doctor's table. She gets a botched abortion and dies. And then the doctor brings her dead body to her apartment and makes it look like she died of natural causes. He then gets killed by the killer, this is a little different in this one because it's not only black gloves, but he wears a black motorcycle helmet and a motorcycle outfit. And long story short, there's these sex-crazed models that work for this model agency, and they get knocked off one by one by the motorcycle killer. Oh, there we go. Oh, I like that cover even better, to be honest.
Yeah, that's the hour version.
And one of the photographers in the film is the beautiful Edwige Fenech, and I think this was her last Giallo appearance. Tons of nudity, tons of violence, very entertaining. I definitely really enjoy this one. And my number 4. I think Dave, you might have it. My disc is at my buddy Glenn's house. For 2 of my discs, I didn't have them. The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward, from 1971, directed by Sergio Martino. This was his first. There you go. Yep, you guys have it. His first Giallo. Another one with Edwige Fenech. This was her first Giallo, I believe. She is just stunningly, achingly beautiful in this film. If I could describe this movie in 3 words, it would be complicated and head spinning. Edwige plays Mrs. Ward, who is this gorgeous but bored housewife. She's married to a boring husband who she just married to get away from her violent and sadistic ex, played by the always awesome Ivan Razumov, who I loved in all the cannibal movies like Eaten Alive and Last Cannibal World. But then Mrs. Ward meets this other dude from a friend of hers, and she gets interested in him, starts hooking up with him. But then her friend gets offed, and then there's a blackmail plot, and all these other women are getting killed, and there's this whole thing where they're this guy locks this room with an ice cube, and the ice cube melts so that the lock will fall. There's just a lot of craziness going on, but I like it. I think it's well done, and it's a lot of fun. And it's worth seeking out, and it's definitely considered a Giallo classic.
And co-starring the great George Hilton, who is in a lot of these Sergio Martino films with Edwige, and they always hook up in the films. And if you watch any of the special features in some of these Blu-rays, they always interview him, and he always talks about how close they were. And I think they had a thing going for a while, because he's like, we were really close. We were really close. And of course, they have sex on camera all the time in most of these movies. So yeah. He's very suave and kind of,
Oh yeah.
Part. Yeah. Cool. 2 good choices there. All right, Craig.
All right, thanks. And I wanted to say that the 5 movies that I'm showing, along with the documentary that Chris held up, these are all streaming on Tubi. So if you choose to go out and get the Blu-rays or 4Ks of these, that's great. But if you don't, these are available to stream uncut, and for your viewing pleasure. So that's how I was able to catch up on a lot of these. So my first pick, and actually I spy it right over Davy's right shoulder. My first pick is The Red Queen Kills Seven Times from 1972, directed by Emilio Maraglia. Yes, starring the luscious Barbara Boucher, along with Marina Malfatti and Sybil Danning, who has reddish hair in it, and kind of she's not as easy to spot in this as she is if you're familiar with seeing her from any of her 80s movies. But the general plot is two sisters are cursed by a family painting. It's and where in 100-year cycle, a red queen is resurrected to kill 7 times. Barbara Boucher's accidentally kills her sister. Her older sister helps cover it up. The painting is destroyed by their grandfather. He dies under mysterious circumstances, and then a series of murders then starts to occur that are being perpetrated by a red-cloaked woman. And so it's got a touch of supernatural in it, with that it's a ghost, perhaps, or no one, you don't know really who the killer is. Is this the dead sister, or is this someone else who's masquerading as the killer? There's some dream sequences where like a ghost stabs one of the ladies, and you really, it's a good whodunit, along with the touch of the supernatural, and it has some of the other fun aspects of the Giallo movies, with beautiful women, got some nudity and some locations, wonderful score, so a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this one, and I actually just watched this recently. The other ones I've seen in the past a little bit, but this one's one of the newer ones where I was trying to come up with something that wasn't from one of the big 3 that Pete had mentioned earlier. So yeah, The Red Queen Kills 7 Times. My second pick, also from 1972, directed by Mario Caiano, is Eye in the Labyrinth. This one stars Rosemary Dexter, and who's beautiful in this, of course, and Adolfo Celli. Now, if that name sounds familiar, perhaps he played Lago, the eye-patched villain in Thunderball with Sean Connery, and also Sybil Danning is also happens to be in this film. She's a little bit more recognizable in this one. A woman played by Rosemary Dexter, she dreams that her psychiatrist boyfriend has been murdered, and then he actually turns up missing. She ends up having to, searches around for him, and people don't seem to know what has become of him. She travels off to this strange seaside village, where of course she sunbathes naked and swims naked, naturally, and she ends naturally, and she ends up at this woman's another character is like new age healing type house to find him, based on a tip that Adolfo Celli has given her. A lot of strange people going, strange things going on there with these new age healing and meditation and hypnosis type facility. So got some strange characters there, and a disappearance, and she's also being stalked by an unknown person who is looking for her boyfriend, who is missing, that she dreamed was murdered. A lot of thrills. It's a good mystery as you're trying to figure out where Luca, the name of her boyfriend, is, and who is following her. People end up being murdered along the way. There's a little bit of a twist ending with it that you maybe kind of see coming, but nonetheless, it's a fun movie. Lots of again, some of the usual tropes with this, but in a fun way. got the nudity and an unknown killer, and just a good time. So yeah, Eye in the Labyrinth.
I've never seen that one.
Yeah, I don't know that one. I'm gonna have to track that one down. There,
It is streaming on Tubi.
Okay, let's check
Nice.
that. And we'll put all the titles of all these films down in the comments too after we post the video. So cool.
Yeah, because one thing about this genre is the titles can be fucking mental, can't they? Absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. Sure. Not the most catchy. On to me, I guess. I didn't get the memo about Fulci not being included, and probably just my ignorance and not reading correctly. So he made my 5, but I'll pull something else out later, as the bishop said to the actress. The film that I would recommend by Fulci, and it just has to be recommended on any serious Giallo or Gialli, I guess is the plural, conversations, Don't Torture a Duckling, which is just, people have this tendency to think of the genre as being a little bit camp, a little bit over the top, a little, exploitation led. This features the grisly murder of young children frequently as a plot point. This is dark, gritty. It's more like a polizioteca or something. It's an extremely bleak film. Although it's 100% a giallo, it does not have a lot of the tropes. Yeah, it's got sexualized nudity in it, but there's themes of pedophilia, there's themes of, again, lots of child murder and whatnot. But it's a stunning achievement by Fulci, and really shows that he's a master storyteller as well as a great filmmaker. So I would still throw Don't Torture a Duckling in there, because I think he gets overshadowed, even though we have done videos on Fulci before. I think his work gets overshadowed by his more over the top works like The Beyond and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'd throw Don't Torture a Duckling in there as my, sorry I didn't get the memo, choice. One that I don't think I would ever have stumbled across myself. My good buddy Sam recommended it to me, and he said, "Yeah, you're going to think it's just a bit too sleazy for you." And I thought, okay. He said, "Stick with it." I said, okay. Shut up. Okay. And it's by Bava, but it's not by that Bava. Don't worry. Okay, so right. Yeah, so it's by Lamberto Bava. Not Steve Bava, the other Bava that nobody talks about. It is indeed Delirium from 1987. Yep. Normally, on the Den, I kind of rise against films that I think are too exploitative just for the sake of it. This film is not just exploitative; it's completely sleazy. It's a 100%. Disgrace to any kind of Catholic upbringing, but what it also is absolutely wonderful at the same time. All the nudity in it is completely warranted. It's written around the fact that our main character works in the sex industry. She was a call girl. She now owns a magazine that happens to be a hardcore porn magazine. So there's an excuse for all the nudity that's happening. A very flimsy excuse, but regardless. But what elevates this is a couple of things. Number one, it's very, very late for a giallo. It's 1987. So even for slashers, this is very late in the game. But it has a ridiculously cool soundtrack where it starts really synth heavy. You think, this is a bit weird. And then it goes into a more traditional kind of string-led thing. And then by the end, you're getting heavy metal. It's the most bizarre soundtrack where when the tone of the film changes along the way, the music itself changes. It's quite wonderfully done. And then the major thing that really separates it is from the killer's point of view, when we see his victims or their victims, we see, how do you describe what we actually see? We see one of the victims as a massive eyeball for a head in a very Naked Lunch, David Cronenberg type way. We see another victim as, again, through the killer's POV shot. So normally when we just see the killer's POV, it's just very standard. We're just using the camera to show what the killer sees. In this case, we're going into the killer's mind. So we're seeing the people that he's going to kill as monsters, a massive eyeball for a head, dripping blood and things. The next one is a massive bee head. So the person's just got a bee, totally bonkers, batshit insane. So it's kind of like Bava is taking his own kind of Demons 2 kind of mentality and transposing them onto the Giallo kind of movie. So it's a great mashup of the two, and it's got absolutely tons and tons and tons of nudity in it. It's like there must have been a tax on clothes in Italy in 1987 or something, because honestly, just everybody, yeah, hot winter as well. But yeah, I mean, it's Simon Boswell who did the score for Demons 2 and whatnot. It's just a cool movie. It's sleazy as hell, but all the better for it. It's one of the few times where that's a real plus. And then I'll go with from Massimo D'Alamanno. What have you done to Solange? What have you done to... See what I mean about these titles? How ridiculous are they? You know, what have you done to Solange? Yeah, see, Pete's flipped his cover, folks. Yeah, a nice reversible cover. So this has got quality coming out the wazoo. I mean, the name Massimo D'Alamanno might not be as familiar as a director as your Bavas and your whatnot, but as a cinematographer, he's the guy that shot the first two Dollars films, Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More. So he's got a brilliant visual style. It's the debut of Camille Keaton, who would obviously go on to be in A Spit in Your Grave, a good 6 or 7 years later. So it's almost a bit strange to see her so early on in her career, and doing Giallo rather than A Spit in Your Grave. But it's essentially about a professor who's having an affair with is one of his students in London. It's very unconvincing London, frankly. It's a very Venetian-looking London. But regardless, he and his young mistress stumble across a murder, and only she sees it. And he drops a pen at the scene. Very, very cookie-cutter type setup. But it's all done in a clever way where if he reveals that too much about his alibi, he's going to be done for being a pervert. He's going to lose his job. So, you know, how does he remedy that? But hey, he's also going to be done for the murder because his pen was there. So it's one of these kind of labyrinth type giallos. It's not one of the more straightforward ones. It's one of those kind of get out of this if you can kind of scenarios, where I don't want to even go past the first 40 minutes in terms of spoilers, because there's things that happen in this where characters die, and normally in a giallo, another trope is you can pretty much tell who's for the off roughly when. In this, there's quite a few times where you go, really? That's why you're killing that person? That's quite shocking. And also what this does that a lot of giallos don't do, the police in a giallo film are always useless bastards. Yeah. Absolutely. That's why it's usually up to the American novelist who's come for the weekend to solve the crime, or the painter who's
the photographer,
sculptor, something like that, aren't they? Yeah, it's always the artistic temperament. But in this case, the police detective is actually a very competent guy who knows what he's doing, and that's the worrying thing, because he's closing in on the guy that we know isn't the murderer. So in this case, the police detective is being used almost as the bad guy, even though he's not. So it's a kind of twist on all the different tropes of giallo. So I'd really recommend what they've done to Solange in terms of it takes a lot of tropes that you might think, oh, I've seen that a million times, and it just twists them a little bit. And of course, the score's done by Ennio Morricone. So I don't think we need to say too much about the quality of that. It's absolutely lush. And it stars Cristina Gablo, who people will remember from The Living Dead at Manchester Morgue, the wonderful Spanish film. Stunning film. Don't want to say too much more about it, but yeah, highly recommended. So what have you done to Solange?
I will say the second half of the film is really good, and it's startling and surprising and kind of nasty, and yeah,
Yep.
good. And they did a follow-up film, which is loosely kind of taught what it done to our daughters, which is also I find pretty entertaining, but that one's definitely better.
It should have been called "Oh, That's What They Did to Solange."
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'm gonna go to 1971 for my first pick today. A film directed by Paolo. I can never say that right. Caveira, Black Belly of the Tarantula.
Good one.
Yeah.
I only just saw this for the first time not that long ago, actually. This is has not been released on Blu-ray as of yet. This is a DVD from Blue Underground, but also it's streaming on Tubi. That's where I saw it the first time. Starring Giancarlo Giannini, the lovely Barbara Boucher, and the lovely and very young Barbara Bach. Yes, that Barbara Bach. So basically, here you have a masked and glove killer out torturing women with long needles, slicing open their abdomens, right? Leaving them there. There's this whole crazy masseuse. Beware the masseuse, right? Unfortunately, Barbara Boucher gets killed like in the very early part of the film, which kind of sucks. But yeah, Barbara Bach throughout the rest of the film. Really stylish, really good nail biter. Good kills in the film. It's pretty grisly, actually. And then, of course, the women look hot as well. But the reveal at the end of the killer is very, very well done. It's pretty fast paced too. It's just over 90 minutes long. Really good. It says here on the front, it says the best Giallo ever made. I don't know if it's the best, but it's definitely a good one. And if you can find it, check it out. Really, really good. My next one, I'm going to go, this is one of my personal favorites, and I really like this director a lot. The Sergio Martino. He's got a whole bunch of them. Probably going to talk about a few more today. The Case of the Scorpion's Tail. Big fan of this film. This one stars George Hilton, once again, Anita Steinberg, Janine Reno, and Ida Galli. This is basically a story of a wealthy businessman, kind of a toad. He's married to this pretty hot lady. He strangely dies in like this small plane wreck, very suspiciously. And of course, the widow is set to inherit a fortune. But then we find out she's had a lover on the side, right? And she's making all these plans to go run away with the lover. And you're thinking, all right, did she, set up this plane? Did she have something to do with the husband's death? That's what everybody starts to think. Who knows? So, of course, on the hunt, investigating is man on the spot, Mr. George Hilton, the suave George Hilton. He plays the insurance investigator, right? So he starts looking into the whole case. He meets up with Anita Steinberg, who's a journalist, actually. Of course, they get into a thing with each other. They start having an affair. All of a sudden now she's working with him to go investigate this whole thing. And then while this is all going on, of course, there's a masked, loved killer on the loose. It's a really good whodunit with a really excellent last half hour. The second act is really, really good. And Anita Steinberg looks great in this as well. I think the twist at the end, nicely done. First time I saw this, I kind of didn't really see it coming, but they make a good case for it. It really makes sense once you kind of see it all laid out. What's really funny in the documentaries on the Blu-ray, they have an interview with George Hilton. Of course, many, many years later, he's an old man now, and the subject comes up with talking about his co-stars. So he starts talking about Anita Steinberg, and he's like, "Yeah, it's really interesting working with her on that film because she was one of the first actresses to get a breast enhancement job because this was 1971. And then she comes on the set and she's got these fresh new boobs." He goes, "And they were hard as marble." It's exactly what he says. And they weren't set right. So if you look at, and she's nude in the movie quite a bit, he goes, if you look at her in the movie, they kind of don't match and they're really stretched apart. And whenever we were close in the lovemaking scenes, it was like they were hard like marble. And I'm like, watch this. I'm like, oh my God, he's just basically telling them all right there. So pretty entertaining, but the film itself is really good and lovely, lovely cinematography. The whole final act of the film is set out on this little island out in the ocean. Really, really gorgeous stuff here. Excellent, excellent movie. Case of the Scorpion's Tail from 1971. And I'll turn it back over to Chris.
Nice. All right, so I'm doing 3 and 2.
2.
Yeah, do 2. I think because Davey had the Fulci film, so he gave 2 other ones.
All right, so I'm doing my number 3 and my number 2.
Yep, you got it.
I've ruined it all. I'm sorry.
Davy's pulling a Keeler tonight. He's like not
doing his own thing. That's all right. That's all right. All good. All right, my number 3. I first saw this like about 15 years ago at an Exhumed Films horror fest, and I loved it. It's from 1971, Slaughter Hotel, directed by Fernando De Leo. Lots of great Italian crime stuff like The Boss and Live Like a Cop, Die Like a Man. Stars the always creepy Klaus Kinski and the beautiful Rosalba Neri, who stars in one of my all-time favorite trashy monster movies, Lady Frankenstein. Klaus Kinski stars as a doctor who works in an asylum for insane women. Of course, though, the insane women are all hot. All the nurses are hot. There's lots of nudity, lots of lesbianism, which always seems to be a trope for Giallo films. Lots of good, very graphic sex in here, and lots of good kills. And my favorite part is that the insane asylum is actually in like this giant mansion that's also partially a museum. But again, it's an insane asylum, but throughout the asylum, on the walls, there's battle axes and swords and crossbows. So the whole movie, the killer just grabs shit off the walls and fucking kills people. It's like, wait,
is that really what you want to have hanging on the walls in a nut house?
We probably shouldn't have it on the walls anyway. But once people start dying from that, you think they'd be like, hey, we should probably take that shit down, right? Nah, they just fucking leave it up the whole movie. But it's a lot of fun, and I think it's a real blast. My number 2 is a movie that I first saw on VHS like 100 fucking years ago. This is I think this is a British Blu-ray. I think this is the only Blu-ray out there. This is from 88 Films.
Yeah.
From 1975. Umberto Lenzi's Eyeball. Of course, Umberto Lenzi did such classics as Cannibal Ferox, Nightmare City. Long story short, there's a bunch of tourists that are literally on a bus tour in Spain. It rains. They're all given red, shitty, way too small raincoats. And then one by one, the tourists will stop for a night in a hotel, and they're killed off by somebody wearing one of these shitty raincoats, and they're wearing red gloves instead of black. And then once the killer kills them, he gouges out one of their eyeballs. It's kind of different because it's set in Spain rather than Italy. Got a great score from Bruno Nicolai. It's got really good kills. Of course, hey, lots of nudity, lesbianism. My favorite part is Davey was mentioning, and we all agreed, the cops are always inept in all of the most of the Giallo films. In this one, they don't even go to fucking cops. And it's like, wait, like nobody thinks, and fuck going to the cops. Like, I'm on vacation on a tour bus, and Craig gets killed. Like the next morning, I'm fucking out of here.
Yeah, they're like, this is a shame what happened, right? Yeah.
Everybody just keeps getting on the bus and going to the next location. And the bus keeps getting lighter and lighter because more and more people are getting killed off. So it cracks me up, but it's a lot of fun, and I would certainly recommend Eyeball from Umberto Lenzi.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Cool, Craig.
All right, thanks. My next one, this is also one from a director that Davey had mentioned just earlier. This one is from 1980 and directed by Lamberto Bava. It's called Macabre. And kind of a screwed up movie. I mean, really kind of a screwed up movie. Kind of, yeah. Yeah, if anyone has seen this, again, it's kind of messed up. A woman, foreign, but it takes place in America. She's living in New Orleans. She's having an affair with her behind the back, obviously, of her husband, and she has 2 children. But the daughter, whose name is Lucy, is a little older and is kind of aware of this. She drowns her younger brother in the apartment building that they live in, and upon news of this, Fred, who is the name of the the adulterer, not the father, drives Jane, her name is, home, and they're in a terrible accident. She's injured, but he is killed. Her lover is killed. A year or so later, Jane is now separated from her husband, and she moves in permanently to the boarding house that she had been staying in. It's managed by conveniently a blind man, and they start to have like a sort of a relationship, but Robert, his name is unable to see some of the things that are going on, that Jane has going on. He hears that it sounds like she's entertaining someone, or has a new lover over, and as he hears moaning and sounds like that, but there's actually no one there. But what we this isn't a spoiler, but Jane, she keeps tending to this box, like a cake sized box or so, that's in her refrigerator. And again, I've already mentioned that her lover has been killed. So, strange imagination. Yeah, so some strange things are happening. The daughter, Lucy, comes back into this and starts to kind of put things together, and you the viewer kind of know what's going on with the mother, but they don't show the reveal until towards the end. But meanwhile, there's also some other crimes that have been happening. So it's a weird kind of movie, a little different, but still pretty entertaining for its strangeness, just some of the shocking parts of it, where it's like, that's a little nasty. So yeah, Macabre from 1980. My other one for this round is again a late one, kind of like that Davey had mentioned before. It's from 1987, directed by Michel Soavi, who in his debut movie the next year, he directed The Church. This movie is called Stage Fright, or Stage Fright Aquarius. Kind of more of a slasher movie, but still lots of fun. Has a little bit of a twist where you know who the killer is, but just lots of gory lots of gory goings on with this. The general plot is that there's a theater troupe that is being led by their domineering director, and he locks the group in the theater so that they can practice, cram, so to speak, for this musical about a serial killer called the Night Owl, like that Pete had shown in the inside of the Blu-ray there. The main actress hurts herself, and so she has to go to the nearest hospital, which is a mental hospital. So, and of course, while there, the real Night Owl is there, hitches a ride into her car, hears that they're making a musical about him, doesn't take too kindly on that, and hitches a ride back to the theater. A lot of gory killings in this, with pickaxes and saws. A great scene where someone is completely torn in half. So it's definitely got the gore amped up to 10 in this. Cast members, just get picked off kind of like one by one. You don't really, and they're locked in. Someone has either purposely hidden the key. To go along with what Chris had said earlier, the police are complete idiots in this. The first death, I believe, is someone who takes a pickaxe to the head. The police then just they take the body away and then just stand guard outside the theater. Not to let anybody out, to let them go home or anything, because the director is kind of like the more psychotic version of Roy Scheider from All That Jazz, but just crazy movie. Kind of non-traditional, as I said, because you kind of know who the killer is. Even some humor in it, especially towards the end when a janitor gets involved and gets involved with taking out the night owl towards the end. So lot of fun. Again, more of a slasher, but still has some of the great aspects of the Giallo that we all enjoy. Stage fright.
I'm a big fan. That movie's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. And Craig, I just had a flashback when you mentioned the director. I'm like, oh my God, you guys left the 24-hour show and you missed a huge chunk of the church.
Right.
Church is brilliant.
Unbelievable, yeah.
And The Church is one of those films in Italy. It was marketed as, is it Zombie 6? Or and it's also
Demons 3.
And it's Evil Dead 4 or something. It's one of those ones.
Try to just attach it to everything, but it does have some connection to demons. But yeah.
It's probably Jaws 6 as well. Who knows?
But yeah, he's done some great stuff. Stage Fright is a hoot.
Yeah,
a
lot of fun. All right, Davey.
So, apologies if you saw me scrambling about there. It's one of the perils of going after folk. You tend to have your picks taken from under you. So my next round was literally going to be Mrs. Ward and The Case of the Scorpion's Tail in a Sergio Martino double. However,
so was mine, along with the tarantula.
However, we improvise, Craig. That's the wonderful thing. So we'll pull a Pardo while we're here if we've pulled a Keeler already, and just recommend the other two in the Sergio Martino box set from Arrow, which in this case are the Suspicious Death of a Minor, which what a wonderful. It could almost be set in New York in the 70s. It's got a very sleazy street vibe of there's been the murder of a prostitute, but then somebody's bumping off all the possible witnesses along the way. It's got a very 42nd Street vibe to it. You could actually see it being done with Anthony Perkins' character from Crimes of Passion or something, something really horrible and scuzzy like that. It's got that really nasty vibe to it. Craig alluded to a couple of things there that are also part of the Giallo genre that we should kind of maybe mention, because they are in these films, and it's what separates them as well from slashers. You can have slapstick comedy in the middle of a very serious Giallo film. And Sargento example, but remember the postman in one of the Animal trilogy who keeps getting hit over the head with a proper, it's a hammer or something. He's get whacked over the head, so he's getting hit full head trauma. But then in the rest of the film, a stab wound will kill you. So I mean, you can go from cartoon violence in a Giallo if it's a comedy scene to actually causing death in the next scene. It's a very strange genre that way, and like Pete showed us there, Animals after the Animal trilogy with Argento, massive for some reason. They always have a motif of animals in these kind of films. When one film took just enough money at the box office, you'd get 100. So all of a sudden there'd be a million Red Queen movies, a million The Curse of movies,
and tarantulas.
Exactly. So it's very much a copycat genre, which kind of works. It shouldn't, but it kind of forces them to be a bit more imaginative. So the other two then, as I mentioned, Suspicious Death of a Minor, but the big one, the absolute massive one, Your Vice is a locked room and only I have the key. What were we saying about ridiculously long, stupid titles? Your Vice is a locked room and only I have the key. A terrific debauched film. Guy has a country manor where he's having all sorts of orgies. You'll notice a lot of themes that run through these films. One of them tends to be guys get their end off quite a lot in these kind of movies. He's got this estate where he's having these great debauched parties. His wife, not terribly happy about it, but it throws suspicion all over the place. It introduces characters just to be suspects and serve no other purpose in the plot. It's kind of wonderful that way. But it's really I'll put forward the case that really Sergio Martino should be the fourth in the discussion if we've kind of 100%. Said, yeah, Argento and Bava and whatnot. Sergio Martino should be the fourth in that discussion because he also gave us, for example, All the Colors of the Dark, just throw another one in there, which kind of combines the Giallo and the Gothic and gives it a very surreal aspect to it, a very twisted and very strange film. Again, Pete, your man crush George Hilton's in there as well, and Bruno Nicolai. So yeah, it's all the same kind of faces that pop up in these as well. It's a very kind of similar scene where people will jump in and out of each other's films. So even though you're an Argento person, you're all of a sudden you're in a Bava and then you're in a Martino and blah, it just kind of folds in on itself. But it kind of makes it fun that way. You kind of, a bit like Hammer, you start to get used to the same faces and the character actors and you start to love them all the more for it. So my pick on this round is, or would have been the ones that the guys have already picked, but really you can't go wrong with Sergio Martini. I think he did 6 Giallos in total, and that's 5 of them there that we've talked about in total. Can't go wrong with any of them. So just Sergio Martino into 2B and see what comes up, and you'll be absolutely grand.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point about how a lot of these same actors appear in a lot of these movies, regardless of who the director is. So you mentioned the husband character in the Vice film. I mean, that's Luigi Pistilli, and he plays, total dirtbag in this movie. And yet in other movies, he plays like a cop, right? Or he plays a character right there. And Anita Steinberg is in this one. She plays the tortured wife. And then you got Edwige Fenech, who plays his niece. And then he has this weird thing going on with her in the film. It's like, and then there's a lesbian thing between Anita and Edwige. It's just like, it's crazy. It's just absolutely nuts film.
Yeah, it's quite a incestuous genre in that regards. But
yeah, big time.
I'll have to scramble for number 1 now. So excuse me.
Well, I mean, we might as well mention the other Sergio Martino film that has not been mentioned. That's Torso from 1973. This might be one of the first slasher films, right? Arguably. I know there's some that came before, but this closely resembles a lot of the slasher films that we would see in the late 70s and early 80s. I mean, it stars Susie Kendall, Tina Owen, Luke Miranda, John Richardson. Great cast. Basically takes place, you have female, all-woman university. Students are being murdered one by one, of course, by a mass killer who uses these colored scarves to strangle his victims, right? So that's always the murder weapon, and then he butchers them afterwards. It's a great cat and mouse thriller, kind of like, serial killer / proto slasher. A lot of great kills, a really terrific climax where you have Susie and the killer alone in a house, right? And the whole just really, really well done. Cool reveal at the end. Good performance by everybody, and good amount of gore in this one. This one maybe not as kind of sleazy as some of the other ones, but definitely much, much more of a slasher film, I think, but still works really well as a giallo because you have all the, the glove killer with the mask and all that kind of stuff. So really, really good. I'm going to throw also All the Colors of the Dark here. I know Davey mentioned it, but I think this one is good because this is kind of like, again, it's another Sergio Martino film. Again, Edwige is in this film as well. George Hilton's in this one. George Regard is in this one. So she plays like this woman who's pretty messed up. She's dating George Hilton. They've been together for a while, boyfriend, girlfriend. She gets pregnant. She has a miscarriage. Then you find out she actually saw her mother die. So she's all down in the dumps about all this kind of stuff. Her sister keeps saying, you need to go see some psychiatric help. You need to go see some psychiatric help. She's got this other girlfriend that she's hanging out with. The girlfriend says, you should come out to the country with me. It'll do you good. I have this group of people, these friends that I hang out with, right? So she's like, all right. They go out there. It turns out it's basically like a satanic cult. And basically the friend is inviting her in so they can do this whole black mass thing, which she does. It's got all these weird kind of like psychedelic drugged out scenes and stuff. And then, it turns out, I'm not going to give all the twists away, but there's a connection between her mother and the sister, and it gets all out of control. The ending is really, really cool. It's like Davey mentioned, it's kind of like a giallo satanic cult type of a film. Really, really it's you watch this film and you think it was like filmed in the 60s because it's got this whole like kind of like psychedelic aura
and a lot of Rosemary's Baby in there as well.
A little bit, yeah, very, very cool stuff. And again, you know, the lovely Edwige's in this, and she's nude through half the movie as always, and again paired up with George Hilton once again. Right? So yeah, I would recommend that one highly. Back to Chris.
All right, so for my number one, I was gonna go with "What Have You Done to Solange," which Davey picked. I guess I'll pick something else. But Davey forgot to mention like the sleaziest plot point about this. The killer goes around, you know, it's all Catholic schoolgirls, and the killer goes around literally stabbing these young girls in their vaginas. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, this movie is fucking insane. It's just Catholic schoolgirls either getting naked in the shower or getting stabbed in their hooches. I mean, it's fucking crazy. But I guess I'll pick another different number one, which I guess technically this is, I guess, the first Giallo I ever saw. I mean, it's a Giallo slasher. It was 1983, so it was 40 years ago. I was 12 years old. My buddy was 11 years old. I didn't know anything about it. All I knew is that there was a new horror movie that was playing the local theater, and it was unrated, which was very rare in my neck of the woods. And this particular theater was a little loose, you know, because unrated means you're not supposed to see it at all unless you're over 17. And I bravely bought, me and my buddy, 2 tickets for the Spanish-American film Pieces, which is a movie that, you know, Dave and I went to school and told everybody what we saw. Nobody believed us, you know, and everybody's like, "What? No, this isn't a real movie. You guys are making this shit up." I mean, with all the nudity, you know, one girl gets sawed in half in the fucking in the bathroom. Another girl loses her head on the tennis field. There's just fucking blood and guts everywhere. But nobody believed us. But now it's, you know, 40 years later, it's got quite a cult following. And I am proud to say that I saw it in its original theatrical run, which makes me pretty fucking old. But yeah, that's that would be my number one. Either that or New York Ripper. But since we're not doing Fulci, then I'm going Pieces.
New York Ripper is great. Yeah.
You know, it wouldn't have even occurred to me to mention Pieces. It doesn't feel like it's almost so weird that I don't think of it as I mean, it is.
Weird, but if you think about it, right, it's got
all the tropes,
all the elements. Yeah. Black Glove Killer. You know, great soundtrack. Tons of hot girls getting stabbed. You know, I mean, when you get to the ending, you're like, what the fuck?
Oh, the ending is something to be believed. But I mean, we should stress that for about 90 seconds of the film, it turns into a Shaw Brothers movie for no reason at all.
For no reason, yeah. I remember, like I said, that was, you know, we told everybody at school. Nobody believed us. Everybody's like, what are you guys talking about?
What was the famous quote in the poster? You don't have to go to Texas for a chainsaw massacre.
Yes.
And then Pieces. It's exactly what you think it is.
Yes, I was going to say, I have a US one sheet somewhere, and I think that's the one that I have. It says it's exactly what you think it is.
Yeah.
The hacked up looking girl.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
that movie, Pieces, was shown at the first exhumed 24 hour.
Yes.
At the first 24-hour show, and it was maybe like the 3rd or 4th movie shown. I had not seen it previously before when it was shown, and to a packed house like that, it was perfect. Standing ovation at the end.
Deserves it at the end.
Everyone was really into it. Great movie with the big crowd. My wife even loved it, and she was, you know, laughing at the parts that you're supposed to laugh at, but was like, you know, at the parts you're supposed to be gored out by. And so, yeah, a lot of fun.
I was going to say, Craig, a few years later, when I did my very first Hudson Horror Show, my first all-day marathon, that was one of my first movies that I ran at the first show was Pieces, and same. It went over, I guess, at that time, a lot, maybe it hadn't been on DVD and Blu-ray yet, but man, people that don't even like horror movies just loved it because it is, you know, so entertaining. You know, from the kung fu to the unintentional comedy to the nudity.
Bluto from Popeyes in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's the Beast Raven, Paul Smith, right?
Paul Smith,
Cool. Greg.
All right, my last one is again, a lot of these just by coincidence are from right around the same time, but 1972, directed by Aldo Lado, is Who Saw Her Die, starring George Lazenby, everyone's least favorite James Bond, and Anita Strindberg, as his their divorced parents of a child who is drowned in Venice, Italy. He plays a sculptor that's there, and he's only there with his daughter. And then when she disappears and is later found drowned, Anita comes over from I believe from London to be with him or to help try to find the killer. George Lazenby looks really skinny in this, very surprising. And it's only 3 years after On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And he looks like a totally different guy. He has longer hair, like a handlebar mustache, and he's very, very skinny. A couple parts where he doesn't have his shirt on. It's like, wow, is this the same guy?
Times were lean after Bond didn't work out.
Yeah, I guess so. But also, coincidentally, this is another movie with Adolfo Celli in it. So you got a Bond villain and James Bond in the movie, but just crossed at different parts. But again, another example of a showing Venice as not the romantic, beautiful place that you would normally associate it with, as he's going around the city trying to figure out what had happened to his daughter. Has some little plot twists along the way with trying to figure out who's who. A score by Ennio Morricone again for this particular one, and just good use of the location and of the confusion. It's more of a serious movie. This one doesn't have too much humor in it the way some of the way the other movies do, but because you really do feel bad for that he seems to be a loving father, and that his daughter had gone missing and drowned. So but a good mystery nonetheless, and just a nice reveal towards the end when you find out who the killer is. So yeah, but enjoyable movie. Who Saw Her Die?
Yeah, it's a good one. That little girl who plays the daughter, little redhead girl, she pops up in a lot of these films as well. Yeah. Cool. Davey.
Well, I've been scrambling through. I'll throw a word in for all these sets. That Arrow released the Giallo Essential sets. They are wonderful. They come with 3 films each, and they're a great way to just kind of bump up your collection nice and quickly. So I was going to go with the only Giallo that Franco Nero ever did, The Fifth Chord, which I think is a fantastic film. One. Yeah, we should have went for that now. It seemed to get a quite good reaction. Yeah, Franco Nero, obviously the original Django. So that's in one of these sets. That's a brilliant film. The one I'll go with, because I think the poster always deserves to be seen by the public at large. It's The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave. I mean, that is. How many posters have ripped that off over the years? It's so many slashers and things have used that exact. It really doesn't sum up the movie, though. It's one of those kind of totally misleading. It makes it look more like a kind of camp comedy thing, whereas it's quite depressing drama in places about this aristocratic guy whose wife Evelyn has died, and he's moved on with this woman, and she's quite the harlot. She's quite a society type, and we know she's only in it for the money. And gradually, people in the family start getting bumped off, and there's speculation starts to roam that Evelyn indeed might have come from beyond the grave and returns to wreak her vengeance on the family that didn't give her the attention and whatnot that she deserved all along. This one's full of daft twists and things, but it takes itself just a bit too seriously that it becomes quite funny, which I kind of like in these movies as well, where they kind of, if they go a bit too far in one direction, they can get quite comedic unintentionally, and you start to have quite a good time. And I think that's why they probably did this poster, because they probably realized, oh, it doesn't work as a really dark drama. We should probably just pretend we were trying to make a dark comedy all along. And that's the way it works best. I mean, it's from see the pronunciation of some of these guys. Emilio Miriaglia, who did the Red Queen kills 7 times. It's got Anthony Stephan, who was another Django, but he wasn't that Django. He was in Django the Bastard, the wonderfully named Django the Bastard. Everybody that played Django was in a Giallo. I think that was also a role, because there's been about 300 Django films, and most of these will say starring from Django, grab a gun, and Django take your whatever. And then you've also got yeah, I think there's only one sequel with Franco Nero, isn't it? Like, there's only one actual Django sequel, but there's about 1 million different Django films. It's also got Mariana Mofate from All the Colors of the Dark. So it's again one of these kind of all-star things where you're going to start to recognize people. Erica Blank from what's she in? Kill Baby Kill, I think. So was it Kill Baby Kill from Baba? Just another solid entry in the whole series. But really, I could have picked. I mean, there's right beside it is the Iguana with the Tongue of Fire, which is another fantastic one. Yeah, I mean, you really can't go wrong when Arrow released them. They tend to pick quality ones. Vinegar Syndrome have got what do they call it? The Forgotten Giallo or something like that. They've got that series. Giallo, yeah. And they're good, but you're not going to get the big hitters that way. If you want the Arrow ones, you'll kind of get
these sets are really good, but these are the really sleazy ones. I mean,
yeah,
I've had the first like 4 sets.
Yeah, I mean, so you're not going to get your
autopsies that the police are blundering in the dark.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. This one's got. Well, this one has Murder Mansion, Autopsy, and Crazy Desires of a Murderer.
Okay.
Yeah,
whereas
really
on this one, for example, Smile Before Death, the Killer reserved 7 seats, Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion, Death Walks on High Heels, Death Walks at Midnight. So all sorts of real classics just get thrown into these box sets, and they're an easy way to pick them up. They tend to go on half price sale with Arrow, which is quite good. So you'll get them for like 20, with the equivalent of about $25 for 3 of them, which is and everybody knows the kind of extras you get with Arrow as well. So you usually get a full commentary and whatnot. And we can go on and on and on. So behind me, you've got from Umberto Lenzi, Knife of Ice, and you've got Double Face and the Black Veil for Lisa, and just all sorts of great genre films. So it's a genre that keeps giving as long as you can dig, as Vinegar Syndrome prove. You will not find a bottom set. There you go, the Lindsay Baker
Carol Baker set. This is really good too. So you get Orgasmo and So Sweet, So Perverse, A Quiet Place to Kill, and Knife of Ice. These are really early. These are the 60s.
Yep.
This is cool, very psychedelic, very early Giallo stuff. And Carol Baker's so gorgeous.
And there's one coming out for Thomas Millian, his collaborations. So there's all sorts of good box sets coming out at the moment. And people should just head Severin, Vinegar Syndrome, and Arrow. Really your 3 main places to get yourself a real good collection.
And if you choose to just stream these,
you want to watch a free go Tubi.
There's a lot. I mean,
there's a lot of Tubi.
Tubi actually has its own category of Italian Giallo, and there's quite a few. Many of the ones that you guys have mentioned are streaming, and almost all of them have the subtitles. Even if it is in English, it has the subtitles to follow along, or like, for example, Torso is all in Italian, but is subtitled in English for you to follow.
And for those who subscribe to Shudder, there's a lot of these on Shudder as well.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
But physical media all the way, please. Come on. Goodness sake. Goodness sake.
Greg is trying to save somebody a buck, man.
There you go.
Skinflints.
All right, my last pick is The Case of the Bloody Iris. 1972, directed by Giuliano Carnameo, something like that. Also stars Miss Edwige Fenech, of course. This is an interesting one about this apartment building where there's a string of murders. They don't catch the murderer, right? So, of course, then the apartment, they seem like the people in the apartment were the only ones getting killed, right? So, of course, the apartment's empty. Two new girls come and moved into the apartment. Edwige and her roommate are one of them, or the two of them. And then, of course, the killer surfaces again and targets the two ladies in that apartment. There's a weird neighbor, like an old lady, and she's got like kind of like a mentally challenged son, or is there a son or not a son? It's kind of like this weird kind of like supernatural murder whodunit type of thing. It's crazy. George Hilton's in it again. No surprise there. Do I like the Hilton Edwige team ups? I think I do. But yeah, it's another really crazy giallo. Lots of fun. Got to check it out if you haven't seen it.
That was the one I was going to pick, and I screwed up my notes because you said the curse of, and I misread my own notes because it was the curse of the. You said curse
the Case of the Bloody Iris.
Yeah,
and there's the case of and the curse
case. I messed that up, but no, just to piggyback on what you said, great movie because that was originally what I had in my notes.
It's pretty nuts. Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
And George Hilton is a guy who's scared of blood, so it's like, is he the killer, is he not the killer? It's a lot of fun. And when you get towards the end with accidental deaths and a stairwell fight, it's a lot of fun. And gorgeous women in that with Edwige and her roommate Annabella Contreras, beautiful. So a lot of fun.
Edwige is someone I'm glad we got to talk about Edwige so much tonight because she's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
She's one of those who, you could say she was probably cast for her dark looks, but like a Barbara Steele, she was also a fantastic actor at the same time. Just brought her A game every single time. Unfortunately, in some of the films, you can't get out your head that she looks a bit like Michael Jackson started to look in about 2001, 2002.
I don't know if I'd say that, Davey. But
that's because that's the way Michael Jackson made himself look. I'm not saying she looks like. I'm saying he started to look more like Edwige. It's like he went in with a picture of Edwige.
I never looked at Michael Jackson the way I look at Edwige.
So. She's even got the little dimple. Watch out! I'm telling you, Edwige. She's even got the little dimple. I was watching Bloody Iris, and I was like, oh my god, she's even got the haircut. This is Invincible era Michael Jackson, and it freaked me the fuck out.
The first instance that you see Edwige in Bloody Iris, she's topless and she has a shirt painted on top of her. On top.
And she's moonwalking.
Top of her. Yeah, I mean, and it's like, wow.
That is the great thing about Italians, though. They're so liberated that it isn't seen as it's sleazy and disgusting, and it's just part of making the film. It's part of the story, it's part of the plot. And they knew that 15-year-old boys were going to spank the monkey too, but who cares, I mean, that's what 15-year-old boys do for a living, isn't it? So it's wonderful stuff. It's a great genre. I'm glad we could kind of shine a spotlight on the lesser ones, if you will, because I don't think they are lesser. They're just overshadowed by the absolute giants of Bava and Argento, really.
I would agree. Yeah, that's a great way to kind of close it here. These are really worth your time. Like I said, the greats of the genre are in that position for a reason. Those are great films, but there's a lot of really, really good ones here as well. And I will agree. I think Sergio Martino's films should be ranked up there with Bava and Argento and Fulci because they're dynamite. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, for all of you watching, you've got lots of films to go check out, I think. Like I said, everything we talked about is available on DVD, Blu-ray, or 4K. And then you've got all the great streaming services that have most of this stuff. So these are not hard to find. I would highly recommend you check them out. They're just loads and loads of fun. Loads and loads of fun. They're a little dated, right? Because, you watch them, they're old films, but I think there's a certain charm in all of that.
And as we said in the group chat the other day, you will get the occasional hairy armpit from the ladies, but it's Europe in the 1970s, and you have to expect that.
Yep, absolutely. So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together. All the damn
time.
Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. And congrats to Davey on 1,000 subscribers over at his YouTube channel. Did want to throw that out there.
Thank you very much.
Always nice to hit those numbers. I tell you, I remember. It's definitely makes you feel good when you do that. So for all viewers of here on Sea of Tranquility who've gone over to help out Davey and watch Davey's content, thank you so much for doing that. I know he appreciates it.
Pleasure.
And we'll see you all here in 2 weeks on the Monsters Den. For Chris Allo, Craig Kaminski, Davy Gallagher, and Jamie Laszlo, and Dan Brown, who couldn't make it tonight. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Pete Pardo. See you in 2 weeks here on the Monsters Den. Take care.